I'm writing today and complaining and teaching some law about the exploitation that goes on in employment, where employers are exploiting workers. The graphic wrote recently about how workers are being paid 150 Ghana cedis a month, 150 Ghana cedis a month, in the name of employing them in the category of casual and temporary workers. And I point to the law to the workers to know their rights first, and also to the employers to also know that simply tagging them as casual or temporary does not mean that you can take them for a ride. And in fact, if you tag someone as a casual worker, you must not get them in working for beyond 6 months. If you do that, you are breaching the law, and you can only engage them in that regard for seasonal or intermittent work. Otherwise, you are doing the wrong thing. And also, if you engage those you call temporary workers, you are not supposed to engage them to do work that is not continuous for more than 1 month. If they do more than 1 month, and more particularly if they do work for more than 6 months or more, and they are not doing work which is continuous and seasonal, you are required in law, and the law presumes them to be permanent staff, not temporary workers. That's their right that they have to enjoy, and you must ensure that all these people get the medical benefits that you are giving generally to your so-called regular staff, and so on and so forth. So go to my Joy Online and read my take about exploiting workers, cheating them in the name of casual and temporary workers, and the rights that they have, and you too as the employer, what you ought not do and what you must do to preserve their rights. My guests are seated and here in the studio this morning. We were doing a month of speaking to or getting the perspective of seasoned editors and hosts and analysts on the issues that come up in the month of August, but we have had a change of plan for very good reasons. So this morning I have two sets of guests, and the first set will be dealing with the banking crisis and matters arising here in the studio. Eric Ni Boy Korte is compliance professional and a chartered banker. Good morning and welcome. This must be your first time on the show, right?
Very much.
Thank you. We are very happy to have you. I'll tell you a little more about him so that you get to know who we are really dealing with and the expertise that he has under him. Dr. Richmond Echiahene, of course, not new to the show. Blunt talking, Dr. Richmond Echiahene. He's a banking and corporate governance consultant. Doc, good morning and welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Also, Professor Godfred A. Bokwin, not new to Newsfile. He's economist and head Department of Finance, University of Ghana. Good morning and welcome, sir.
Good morning.
Right. And I decided kept him for last. They say ladies first, but I decided kept her for last. Clara Berry Kasati. Okay. She is a lawyer and teaches the law at GIMPA. Good morning, Clara.
Good morning.
Right. As I made my way here, your husband sent me a message. And he said, look, today is my wife's birthday. So together with the family, we want to give her a surprise. So just say happy birthday to her and let her know that we cherish her. And he particularly mentions that they also cherish you a lot more for your contributions to the nation. Happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Great.
Thank you very much.
All right. So as you already know, this week has been a week when there's been leaked confidential Boulders Advisors report that has detailed a lot about the rot that went on in UT Capital and also in the UT Bank and Capital Bank. And it's done what I say, bolstered, the screams for prosecution of those who have been indicted for the collapse of the Capital and the UT banks. So the question we are asking is that these banks that have collapsed, and eventually consolidated, the 5 of them consolidated into the Consolidated Bank Ghana. And of course, you know, UT and Capital Bank now belong to Ghana GCB Bank. They have cost us, the state, a loss of $1.6 billion dollars, not cedis. So what exactly will happen and what must happen? You have heard so many groupings and individuals make certain comments. But let's begin by listening to Dr. Etiahene, who says these are Ponzi schemes from the revelations that we have seen so far. We will hear also from Dr. Ken Thompson, who says prosecutions must happen and happen quick. Dr. Otio Echampong also has similar views. So is Professor Bokping, Al-Hassan Andani, and Reverend Fayosi of the Christian Council on the development. Let's listen to some of them very briefly and come to the studio to deal with the issue.
Hey, there is a Ponzi scheme. They are all Ponzi schemes, and it's incredible. Listening to it, and I'm surprised. I'm shaking like a baby. Look, the law must take its course. We must make sure that we treat this to its fullest end.
They should be put before a court of competent jurisdiction, that's what they say. Yeah. If they are found culpable, lock them up, take the key, and assure us Odo River will flood, and throw the key in the river. That's all we should do.
The move that has been initiated by the ICAG, that's the Institute of Chartered Accountants Ghana, is in the right direction. And if their investigation turns out to establish that, then it will be good not only for the profession, but for the whole economy. So I think we should give them the opportunity to investigate. You know, as I said earlier, the primary responsibility is on the management in the preparation of financial statement, but the auditors also give the assurance to the shareholders that yes, we have conducted and found that everything was okay. Yes.
If you look at the report from the central bank from 2014, 2015, 2016, I mean, they knew largely what was going on. I mean, I would have been surprised if the central bank didn't know or was totally ignorant of the things going on within these banks and among these banks. I would have been surprised. That would have meant that we are not safe, and our deposits are not safe in the banking industry. But I take consolation in the fact that they knew largely, and I believe that the central bank would have to apologize at some point in time, because I believe they were complicit to some extent in how these things have evolved.
The action taking is about the conduct of banking business of these licensed entities. The Bank of Ghana gives you a license, and as I said, a set of rules and regulations and performance matrices you're supposed to abide by and produce. So whichever financial institution there is, if you're not meeting those standards, obligation particularly to your depositors, to the regulator in terms of prudential requirements, action will be taken. So the action taken is as a consequence of these institutions falling short of the performance criteria set for normal banks to operate. So nothing to do with the shareholder at the stage. It is just the performance criteria which has been set for all banks. So the 7 banks that you've mentioned fall short, as the governor has said, and some of it is now public, in the conduct of banking business. So again, let's rest the shareholders.
I would like to say here for the record that the Christian Council wants to commend the governor of the Bank of Ghana and his team for exposing the rot in the banking system in Ghana and for actually closing down 7 of the banks. We also want to place on record that the Christian Council of Ghana thinks that all those who are culpable in this matter, be they staff of the Bank of Ghana or directors of the closed banks, should be prosecuted, should face the full rigors of the law as much as possible. Because the amount of money that we hear has gone into this bailing out of these banks is enough to do a lot of social interventions in our country.
Right. So, I'll disclose a prejudice against against Eric. To the point that I suspect that because of the way, Prof. Richmond, you have done an annotation of some of the revelations and things, and you have written about your thing there. I think I will start with Ni, so that Ni might be a moderating influence on the things you have written on there. Okay, so now Ni is a compliance professional. He's Ghana's only fellow of the International Compliance Association, ICA, of the UK. He's associate of Ghana's Chartered Institute of Bankers, CIB, and a chief examiner of the law and practice paper at the CIB. He's also an organization and matters person, a risk management and IT-oriented person with 40 solid years of banking with special interest in branch control, development of business policy and business operational procedure manuals, and training in compliance, banking compliance, AML compliance, risk management, and the role of IT in business. Until January 2016, Eric was head compliance and anti-money laundering reporting officer. So here is my expectation. Disappoint me. All that they have had to say, what different do you have to say? They are simply saying what has been revealed is just too much. It gets everybody angry, infuriated, and prosecutions must be happening now.
Well, the foregoing for me is not unexpected. But the consolation for me is that the BoG has risen to its task. Whether it came too late or not for me is irrelevant under the circumstances, because we've gotten to know where we are right now. A lot of things would have gone wrong. How they went wrong is what has evolved over the period. Who went wrong is another matter for discussion, because we need to sort out what went wrong, how it went wrong. Otherwise, we might be tempted to go looking for who went wrong, remove Kwesi, bring Equia. If we have not sorted out the causation, we'll only be dealing with the implications. And so I know that we've come this far.
What's your summary of what has happened and what ought to happen?
What happened is simply a non-compliance issue, which only does not affect or did not happen in the financial service industry alone. It's quite widespread. But right now, as we speak, all the other sectors will certainly have bank accounts. And all these banks that went bust did not only go bust to affect individuals, but businesses as well. So the entire economy is involved under the circumstances.
The Bank of Ghana attempts to bail out a collapsing bank.
Yes.
And the rescue package is 610 million Ghana cedis, right? Yeah. And that money is used to do so many other businesses. You say this is a mere compliance, non-compliance issue?
Well, once again, looking at it from the causation, what you just said brings my mind to the opportunity cost if those things are not gone wrong. But they have gone wrong. We are not in very normal times at the moment. That's why I say we need to get what cost them. If we're able to get what cost them, it becomes very easy to move on to bring up strategies to move away from where we are.
Again, the Bank of Ghana is taking taxpayers' money and giving them to rescue banks and promises that we will bring advisors to assist to police how you spend this money to achieve the rescue. They don't do it. Nobody monitors anything. And you say this is simple?
Of course, yes.
Non-compliance matters.
Bank of Ghana, until Bank of Ghana dropped the hammer on UT and Capital, all of us thought all was well. The fact also remains that regulation is a process which would have begun one day, one time, until we get to this stage, and the Bank of Ghana will say enough is enough. And so having gotten to this stage, the accounts have this adage, niaba kono enye kwem, niakano, and they say ye bohobai. That's why I look at it from this point of view, and I know for sure that if we had a right compliance framework which recognizes from the International Compliance Association aspect of compliance, with adherence to rules and regulations, we have a level 1 environment involving the external environment of all laws that relate and govern human activity and businesses. And these laws are expected to be converted into the level 2 environment for business policies and procedure manuals, which must translate as low as into job description.
Okay, we will take time. You will get into the details, speaking to the specific figures and revelations that have been made as to matters that people have classified as pure criminal rape of the state. Now, Doc, I prove my prejudice wrong, that you're not going to say some people should be hanged immediately.
Well, thank you very much. What I'm saying is that there have been regulatory failures and there have corporate governance failures. And if you term it as systemic failure, both on the side of the regulator and on the side of the operators, the shareholders and directors. I'm not calling for their head to be hanged. But considering what you just said, I have never even calculated the cost. But I saw your cost 1.6 billion, which is close to the $2 billion we are taking from the Chinese to develop. So if people can squander 1.6 billion, which is close to the Chinese, then I think if I call for their head, I'm not asking for anything less. I think people should be held responsible, accountable, and where they need be, where the law must fall, it must fall and people must face the rigors of the law. And again, we should put mechanism, process of recovery, the debt. Because if people have acquired estates somewhere, we cannot let it go. So I'm saying that apart from the KPMG coming out with the fantastic figures and telling us, Bank of Ghana should begin to think about recovery. It has happened to us before. 1991, when we did a non-performing asset trust, it was meant to recover. So it's not just telling us that people have blown 1.6. Bank of Ghana should start today. In as much as we are going to prosecute people, we must have a mechanism of recovering the monies that they have squandered.
It's for the purpose of recovery that you have the receivers, right?
Exactly, and the process must go on quicker because the longer it stays, and you don't forget, in this country, people can even do tunneling. They'll be pushing the assets here and there. I have an experience. Somebody has taken my money business. I know his house. By the time I realize the ownership has been transferred, and these people are very smart.
I mean, they'll conceal the.
They will conceal.
Ownerships.
Yeah, they conceal the ownership. So you go with this alacrity and speed to make sure that as you're talking about it, as the bank governor is talking about it. We're talking about Bank of Ghana failures, some officials, and the directors and shareholders. We should also be mindful that it is not just talking about it. We need to recover.
Okay.
At least I'll give you an example.
Right.
Nigeria in 2010, 2011, they had a similar challenges, trillions of naira. They set an AMCOM, which is, the AMCOM is a company to recover. And I bet you they have recovered about 70% of the money. They sold the asset. So that's what I'm saying, that it is not just telling us the figures. We must put strategies to recover.
And I was reminding you that they have appointed receivers. And the job of the receivers is to ensure recovery as well, right?
Exactly, because if you appoint KPMG, we should have a holistic and a total recovery. KPMG, what mechanism would they put? I mean, I'm telling you, it happened in 1991, 1999, 91. We had a whole mechanism of non-performing asset trust. And his job was to recover. So I think that the KPMGs are doing a good job, but Bank of Ghana must make sure that these things are put as done in Nigeria.
Okay. You help us redefine properly exactly what you expect beyond appointing receivers. But, Prof, so from what you have heard and read so far, what are your expectations? What is your summary of what has gone wrong, and what are your expectations going forward?
Thank you very much. I share largely with the discussion so far. No one is particularly happy. But the beautiful thing is that we've certainly realized that we could have done better, which in itself is very positive. Our resolve to go forward is very, very important. And I agree with him from in terms of the causes. So you can look at it from the central bank point of view. You can look at it from the banks, and you can look at the shareholders. So we have a central bank who failed considerably in actually protecting depositors and ensuring trust, which is actually the bedrock of regulation. And in terms of resolving that, perhaps it's time to reform the central bank, not only in terms of guaranteeing their theoretical independence, but their operational independence also. In terms of the appointment process of the governors, the composition of the board of the central bank is very, very important. Until we are able to resolve that, we may not be able to deal with the politically connected individuals. So you would observe from one of the minutes from one of the banks where they were even discussing the possibility of meeting the president. Mm-hmm. Because an individual is more or less connected to the president. So this is how they were looking at it. So for those politically connected, powerful individuals, we have to find a way of dealing with them. That's very important. And then perhaps is it the time to also separate supervision from the other functions of the central bank? Will it bring more efficiency? These are issues. So you can see that the central bank, and through their own press statement and all of that, there is an admission that they went wrong. The reason I'm saying so is that the law itself prescribes remedies for some of these infractions. When did they get to know? And what were the actions that they took? Why have they left it so late to this point? Right. And that is what is eroding the confidence. Then you come to the banks. Then you have shareholders who refused to recognize that the bank they themselves have formed is separate and distinct from the shareholders, and also separate and distinct from the board or the management. And therefore you have shareholders who are doing things largely for their own self-interest. There's a way to deal with that. My priority, and then you can talk about auditors. Here my focus is more external auditors. You know, in all the crises that we have seen, in fact since 1974, we've had about 18 major bank crises or financial crises. You would find auditors, external auditors, blameable in all of this. You can talk about Arthur Andersen and their role in the crisis in the U.S., okay. Globacom, Enron, and all of that.
Let me take Clara's preliminary view of, you know, having followed the issues so far and the material that you have had the opportunity of reading so far. What you have to say from a corporate legal practitioner point of view and teacher. What do you have to say? And then when we come, you would also help us detail the levels of responsibility as you began to do. Who should be held responsible and how? Yes, Clara.
Thank you very much, Samson. And then good morning to your viewers and listeners everywhere, especially to my family and the very many people who are wishing me a happy birthday. I feel very much loved and I'm very grateful. Now, Samson, to come to your issue, well, I don't know. I'm trying to have the level of confidence that a lot of people are showing that the Bank of Ghana is trying to do the right thing or to do the proper thing. But unfortunately, I really can't find legitimate grounds for such confidence. The reason is, if we are going to look at it critically, the legal framework was there already to prevent what has happened from happening. But what happened? Banking is a very heavily regulated industry. It's a heavily regulated industry everywhere. And as Prof said, it thrives on trust because it is only based on trust that people will bring you their money with the belief that anytime they come back for their money, they will get it. It is for the reason we have a regulator, in this case the central bank, with the task to ensure that people in the banking industry comply with certain rules and regulations. It is even for that reason that if a person purports to engage in any business called banking and hasn't even got a license, the Bank of Ghana has the power to go after that person. The key reason, objective, being to protect the public and to protect the deposits of the public. What did we see? It's not really, yes, there has been non-compliance, but what has boldened the non-compliance? I think the non-compliance has been boldened by the belief or the expectation of non-enforcement. Because for everything that has happened, there is no doubt.
Or expectation of non-enforcement?
Yes. The people believed that they would get away with it. And they expected to get away with it. It is the only reason why the non-compliance continued. Because let's face it, if you look at the information from the Bank of Ghana, if you look at the material available, this did not happen on the blind side of the Bank of Ghana. It did not. The Bank of Ghana was aware at each stage that something was going wrong. What did the Bank of Ghana do? This is not one of the situations where we can blame it on the law. The legal framework has given the Bank of Ghana certain powers. What did they do with those powers? They just sat on them. So I really don't think, and yes, I understand I get some saying that, well, we have a new regime, a new administration in place and it's trying. I don't believe in that. I think we have
a new law.
Yes, and a new law. I think we have to stop personalizing issues and dealing with the institution. Because we have to run our systems in such a way that it doesn't matter who is there, but if you are doing the wrong thing, the system will stop you. We can't keep running expecting that some angel somewhere will get an opportunity to do wrong, but will not do the wrong and still go ahead to act in our favor. So for me, this is one of the situations where I still haven't really heard anything addressing the core issue. All I have heard is that Bank of Ghana is passing its failures onto us, the general public, the taxpayer.
Oh, they've said more than that. They're speaking about how they intend to strengthen their supervisory role and all of that.
Okay, so what has happened with the non-compliance and the people whose job it was to keep everybody else in check? I haven't heard anything that is going to...
There are some of their officers who are before EOCO answering questions for what they have done.
Administrative issues, because if you are an administrator, you have employees. I believe you have rules and regulations as to how your employees are required to conduct themselves. And if your employees breach those rules and regulations, it's not EOCO's duty to come and address them. It's the Bank of Ghana's duty.
Perhaps you sack them first? Is that what you're talking about?
Sorry?
You sack them first?
I don't know. I don't know what breaches that they have committed. You would have to know what breaches they have committed to know what sanctions that they should do. But from their own report, there were breaches from inside, from their own staff.
Do I hear you to say you want to hear the Bank of Ghana tell us what it has done to its officers who were responsible for these particular jobs of supervision and regulation?
I want to hear from Bank of Ghana, one, why their officers turned a blind eye or probably encouraged this non-compliance that was going on. What are the systems in Bank of Ghana for their own internal processes that allows their employees to get away with this? So I expect to hear Bank of Ghana saying that administratively, they are holding themselves accountable. And not just that, that administratively, they have identified the lapses in their own administrative setup that allowed this to foster. And they are taking A, B, C, D steps to address that so that in future, other employees are not able to do the same thing. Okay. I am not ready to say that, well, here that, oh, it is just these persons who are bad, and if we get rid of them and then we get another. No, I want to hear about the systems that are put in place to prevent. And if after doing everything you are unable to prevent, at the earliest opportunity, you hold accountable. Not for it to go this long, and then at the end of the day, you come back and throw the burden on the poor taxpayer. We have to cough up this money.
So, Doc, you want a certain different format of the process of recovery. I can assure you what we are doing now, the question now, is going ahead, because that is not to analyze the problem, it's to look for the solution. And that was your approach in getting back money that appears to be lost. These things are not new. As far back as 2014, you remember we heard of the former Capital Bank CEO, that he had written a memo and he predicted that the bank was in distress and was going to collapse. He actually sent a copy of that letter to the Bank of Ghana. It does appear they didn't act. They waited until and pushed even more money to them. So what is the exact vehicle you are looking at different from appointment of a receiver to pursue recoveries?
Thank you very much. I think Professor made some very important, which I want to contribute before I end up with it.
Okay.
The problem I have is that he talked about operational independence of central bank. At least there are 4 independence: financial independence, financial independence. And I believe that we have come to a point that we should redefine the independence of central bank. Because from what is happening, it looks to me that there's so many political connections with it that certain things people cannot even talk about it. I was at this, the Joy FM radio with Jesse, and when they asked him a question, who caused these lapses? Possibly he cannot say who said that, because there are a lot of duress or undue influence on some of them. Even licensing. Let me go back to licensing.
Sorry, but who's the Jesse you're referring to?
The head of BSD.
Okay.
I was with him last Tuesday.
The head of Banking Supervision Department of the Bank of Ghana.
On this same program.
Right.
You see, I asked myself a question. A Bank of Ghana director become a chairman of a bank. Then he walk up to you as Jesse, I need a license. Will you be able to critically evaluate what he's saying and see that there are compliance issues that have to be resolved? So the independence of central bank, to me, is very critical. And we should take it critically and begin to look at what we have. Prof said another thing. I have written a lot about the Twin Peak approach on regulation. People don't seem to understand. You see, it happens in the UK, FSA. So they move quickly, they move 2013 to Twin Peak approach, where regulations, we have one prudential regulatory authority whose job is to make sure that insurance, banking, asset management, microfinances are actually regulated by one body under the central bank. It is a new body whose job. And then we have conduct, financial conduct. The reason being I'm saying is that there have been regulatory arbitrages. In this country, people open microfinance. At the same time, they open savings and loans. At the same time, they open banks. And they even open asset management.
What's wrong with it?
Yes, that is where monies are tunneled. Yeah. They are tunneled from here to there so that it is used differently. But if it was regulated by one authority, there's what we call ownership mapping structure. There was no way a bank that has collapsed will have a shareholding in another bank. Because there's no ownership mapping in Ghana, and there's no ownership of directors. And until we get to the point that we go through it, we won't be able to resolve some of these issues. Now let me come back to your recovery. I am so keen about the recovery because they have spent, or they have, whatever word you want to use it, they have, monies have been misapplied. But we don't have to sit down and talk about the figures, 1.6 billion, without strategically, because UT and Capital almost a year. And I want to hear this receiver, fine, but put a mechanism, a very good mechanism, as I've told you, the Non-Performing Asset Committee and the AMCOM in Nigeria. And I'm telling you, they recovered 70% within a space of 5 years. So I think we need to learn from other jurisdictions where we can begin to look at the recovery, in addition to the prosecution of people who might have gotten themselves into this financial malfeasance. And I believe when we solve these things from both angles, by looking at the individuals, the Bank of Ghana officials.
So like you say, UT
Capital, you expect to get some progress report on the recoveries.
Exactly.
Yes, but these things are going on. As far, you know, they are in Bank of GCB. They are in GCB, and there have been some suits to seek to recover the money from those who owe. But you want them to update the public.
They need to update the public.
Because public money has been spent.
It's like you just said, 1.6 billion. It happened in England, and they were briefed constantly. The governor, McCartney used to brief them, to the Parliamentary Financial Select Committee, how much they have gone. Today, Lloyds Bank and Royal Bank has almost been able to pay all the debt. And they went in with this mechanism to recovery. So I'm saying that apart from all that we're saying, we need to be briefed. The problem we have here is that We wait, as Clara said. Nobody is told anything. Suddenly you sit down there and something has happened. And in a nation like this, we need to be briefed. And Dr. Prof said something. I want to add something. The role of the Bank of Ghana directors, even including the board, they also have a role in this. It is not only the governor. It's not only the governor. So the Bank of Ghana independence, as Prof is saying, we should look at it, including who even become a board member of Bank of Ghana, so that they can bring all these knowledge to bear, especially with regulation. Our regulations and supervision is terribly bad. And I think that the time has come for us to look at Bank of Ghana financial independence, operational and functional independence, so that we can look at it holistically.
Right, but that small point, you were developing a point around a vehicle other than the receiver to do the recoveries.
I believe that if we set a mechanism or another institution where the KPMG are doing this and that, and they all have to do it, because if somebody has acquired assets all over the place, I know somebody who has acquired estates, some estates in Takrade. I mean, all these things might quickly be sold so that we can.
So, what mechanism are you looking for apart from the receiver doing this job of getting the money back?
I think the receiver is doing a job, but what I'm saying, there must be an addition to it to help us, because other than that, this KPMG will go on and on and on and on and on. It can take years.
I see.
It can take years.
Okay, thanks. Now, Prof, you were seeking to look at the chain of responsibility. So, help us understand from the documents you have. I've seen, how much notes you have put in front of you. So, take us. We are in your class, and you have this seminal case to help us understand who must take some responsibility. Who did what wrong, and what responsibility they ought to take.
Okay, thank you very much. So I want to build on especially from our legal person here, in terms of the law itself has remedies about some of these infractions. Perhaps enforcement was an issue, which I agree. So in fact, in doing my marking scheme this morning, I looked at the central bank, and then I talked about its independence, board composition, and then the process of appointment and all of that. So we can look at how to deal with that. And in fact, it is not enough. The central bank perhaps made an announcement a couple of months ago or so that certain people have been transferred and all of that. I don't know, is that sufficient and all of that? I mean, we listened to the testimonies or the interrogation when it came to Wells Fargo in the US. How they questioned the directors, the chief executives. It was so thorough. You understand? So, I mean, and let me also say that, how much the central bank has injected in restructuring in all of this, and it's not lost money. It's not lost money. Provided we are able to recover all these monies. So, because the point is that it's not like we slept one day and suddenly some powerful forces just descended and took away these monies. And so far from what we have read, we can trace those financial flows here and there. But my worry, I'm not a legal person, my worry is whether KPMG has got that powers really to go in a more forcefully manner and do these asset recoveries. Do they have that cloud really with the necessary legal backing that non-compliance with their request or something would lead you to ABC? I'm not too sure.
There probably won't be any other entity that can use force to recover. You would, if they do not pay on demand, they will go to court and get them to a court order to get them to comply. Yeah. Or the assets will be, sold to recover the monies.
Thank you very much. So, my preference is to go for recovery before we hang people. I'm not too sure. I personally don't believe in jailing people. If there's an opportunity to recover what is lost and with some interest, that would be my priority. And then the other things can come about, because at the end of the day, and because of the lack of regular update since UT Bank and Capital Bank, there is this perception that it's going to be business as usual. And a good number of people believe that in this country it's easier to get away with wrongdoing than to be rewarded for doing good. Okay, so, and it's all in line with what she said, that people respond to incentives. If people think that, hey, you can get away with doing X, or nobody will talk about it, or I'm well connected, and all of that, is going to be a problem. And then also, we also have to look at the sanctioning regime, and then its enforcement also. Then when you come to the auditors, external auditors, you know, in all of these things, they've been left out quite completely. But I was happy last week when I heard, maybe for the first time, ICA Ghana and then other professional bodies actually talk, because there are ethical issues that they have to comply with, and we have to work together and in addressing these things. And I also agree with Dr. Eto'ahene here in terms of the regulatory arbitrage. So you have a group of shareholders who are forming these things that cut across different regulatory boundaries, and they seem to be profiting from that regulatory arbitrage. I mean, a good example is also Men's Gold, where they believe that they don't come under the supervision of the central bank, and then when it comes to Securities and Exchange Commission also, they feel that, hey, so where are you in this economy?
We'll deal with that separately, but can you help us by getting to some of the specifics as regards, you said what arbitrage? Regulatory arbitrage.
Yeah.
And you're talking about where, you know, the shareholders and so on
are just moving money,
become like an octopus. They are developing all over the place, and including even taking money that the state has given to them to rescue
for
them.
specific purposes.
So when you take UT and Capital Bank, which are the points that stick out to you?
So we are talking about certain loans that were given to individuals. Probably some may have exceeded the single obligor limit, but they went ahead.
It's not probably. That is a fact.
Yes, and then in here you look at the role of the shareholders who feel that this company, this bank belongs to us, and therefore they are in such a position to even set aside board supervision because they want ABC done. And sometimes for your own job security, you know, you take, because, you know, from 2013, 2014, for some of us in academia, you get information about some of these things, and that, oh, this is what has happened. And sometimes your student will call you, Prof, this is the challenge. I mean, and all of that. So, but I'm saying that the central bank knew these things, and they followed it, probably approved actively or inactively, and that is why these things went on. So we are talking about shareholders who failed to recognize that the bank they themselves form has got a going concern, and their actions actually truncated the going concern of the of those banks, and that has to be addressed. And then when you talk about even institutions, you know, it is not sufficient to say let's build institutions without credible people to manage and lead those institutions. My father told me that fish rots from the head. And once it starts from the head, it's like there's nothing you can do about it. That is why leadership is very, very important. And then in this country, you also realize that to do genuine business and make profit is not easy. On the average, it is as though cutting corners is the surest way of doing some of these things. And some have taken loans at practically zero interest rates. And you are asking yourself, how does this happen? And this is not really, it doesn't cut across the entire occupational groups in the banks. We have bank staff, employees, tellers who are given quotas, a target, and they go through the sun and all of that. Mobilize these funds, bring these funds into the bank, and then shareholders and directors are doing other things with it. I mean, that's very sad. So, and then in terms of how we even form businesses, I mean, I've been asking my question. These people, were they entrepreneurs in the first place? Probably some of them had access to cheap money.
You seem to approach the subject in a manner that suggests, okay, things happen because people, you know, were not diligent enough. But from the reports that you have been privileged to read, we are reading about shareholders, directors of the defunct UT and Capital banks engaging in willful deceit. And those are not my words.
Yeah, from the central bank.
Yes, willful deceit. We are reading about the 195 million rescue capital that was given to the Capital Bank being used to set up Sovereign Bank. So speak to some of these specifics and tell us what is supposed to be the chain of responsibility and what should happen.
Yeah, so in terms of this rescue package, the central bank job here is more of monitoring and ensuring that these monies are applied in the right way. Once you discover that these monies are being misapplied, the central bank ought to act immediately. And the fact that these things continue, as I said, the central bank has been complicit in all of these things, and there's no way they can explain it. So if there's any blame, they also have to take the blame. If there's any prosecution, something has to also happen from that side. So we don't shift all these things just entirely to the shareholders, as though there's no way these shareholders, they are not, look, the central bank, there are quite smart people at the central bank. I don't think that these shareholders are so financially, did some financial engineering that we needed to pray to be able to discover and all of that. So these are just plain, disrespect for the law and the fact that they felt they could get away with it. Also because some of them were politically connected. Some of them are also very powerful, whether within society and all of that. So probably they felt like they were untouchable. And sometimes, you are even afraid to even bring some of these people into the land. And I want to believe that there were clues, there were suggestions, there were comments, there were issues that even within the central bank itself, people felt uncomfortable about. But the way sometimes public institutions are, you're also thinking about your own job stability. By the time you realize you are posted to a place that you are just not comfortable of and all of that. So in terms of the systems, I see that
but do people who think in the manner you just suggested deserve to be at the central bank and be at the supervisory department?
Yeah.
If you will take an action, you refuse to take an action because you're afraid and that you're also thinking that some politician might, hurt you.
Let me tell you something, to be very honest with you. The mode of appointment, even at the basic level, across the different occupational groups, it so does not allow proper work to be done. Sometimes your subordinate came in there through a higher person ahead of you, which doesn't even allow you really to even supervise your subordinate that well. So we had, I think, what's the early part of this year or so, when somebody said that, it's easier to get appointment at the central bank through a certain chief, through a certain former governor of Bank of Ghana, and all of those things. So you find that the channel through which people get all these things in there is such that sometimes it's like I said, dead weights across. If it's not only at the central bank, look, you go to ministries, you find that people, their children, grandchildren, they are all there. And
they are not there on merit.
They are not there on merit. Sometimes we are in academia, you will find that very intelligent, very smart people, well-trained, and they don't get those jobs. And then you are there, somebody brings a reference. But you just finished a receipt or something. And then when you investigate, you will find how well connected they are. And sometimes that itself is a disincentive to hard work. Okay. And you'll find this across public sector institutions.
Maybe me should take it up from where you, are pausing. We read where in the Boulders report, clearly it says, without any equivocation, that Capital Bank, the founder, used 80 million Ghana cedis of depositors' funds as, quote, personal piggy bank, unquote. These are the things we are talking about. Yeah. In UT, the report says that Mr. Mwabing hid 5 million Ghana cedis loan repayment from someone who was owing. Yes. what runs through your mind as someone who looks at compliance and risk when you read these reports?
Once again, all the submissions that have been made here for me are quite speaking to the issues. But again, I heard earlier on governance, corporate governance, and non-enforcement, and I liked her phrase which you brought up again. It all boils down to the fact that somebody somewhere is not doing something which should be done. Okay? And it cuts across the entire discussions we're having. And so we need to be very careful how we deal with the issues as they sit. As we speak right now, the international community may be watching us. And we must be thankful to God that the regulator was up and coming, if for nothing at all, about these share movement things and what they call, is it the octopus sort of thing? Mm-hmm. Look, in the next few months, the correspondent banks are going to do some due diligence on us. How will it have looked like if a bank like Citibank had seen this share thing between Unibank and ADB? Then Ghana becomes a country risk issue. We've gotten to this fact, it has come out again. My worry now is we've gotten to this stage. If for nothing at all, we have heard about some of the things that went wrong. Unfortunately, I haven't seen much about how they went wrong. Okay, as for who went wrong, we all know we've had it. We've heard all these things like somebody saying, I resigned before, what have you, and all the others. Okay, but the important part for me is that we have been able to identify the who. It's very important that we take note of the what went wrong and how it went wrong, because that is what will inform the various strategies. And let me make this appeal here. The banking business is based on trust. We've gotten to this turbulent stage. If the banks cannot trust the regulator to take control of the situation and deal, I wonder how customers will trust the banks. Coincidentally, our banking market has some level of customer loyalty. Even if it has reduced, we haven't lost it. It is time some well-meaning people and organizations speak out and tell us, hey, yes, we have heard about all these things that went wrong. The regulator is up and dealing with issues. Media is doing its bit by giving us this platform so we can speak about them. But in the way forward, let us perhaps pull the parking brake and be mindful and circumspect about how we discuss these issues so we will build a good road for the way forward. Bank of Ghana is a regulator. It has come and brought us this far. I'm hearing things like transfers in Bank of Ghana and what have you. But I also believe that Bank of Ghana has quite a number of chartered bankers there, and which would need to get the regulator harnessing the potential of these people. If in previous times they have not been utilized effectively, they have them, put up some refresher training courses for them, make them much more versatile to be able to understand the commercial banking floor. So that when they go out and bring out issues, they will not feel intimidated. Okay, I'm using the word intimidated because I work in one bank which is no longer in existence, so I can speak it out like as it is, where 1.5 years after we had launched and started working, Bank of BSD came round and credit risk had gone bad already. They raised their issues and concerns, and I sat there quietly and told them, asked the head credit, did we envisage what Bank of Ghana is telling us about the situation as it was? They said, oh no, but these people, they don't understand commercial banking, whatever. The Bank of Ghana gave us 6 months. They came back again, and then it had crystallized much further. And then the head credit said, oh, I think I agree with Bank of Ghana. And I said to him, we intimidate them when they come sometimes. What they saw 3 months ago, 6 months ago, we are now seeing them. Their regulator is there to work with us. We need to engage them and get these things sorted out so we can move on. Now let's come to, so the transfer that have been made, I want to believe that what irrespective of the fact that somebody may not be happy for being moved from a comfortable zone or being transferred to a place they will call Siberia, let us all in good faith trust that we have what it takes to move the country on under the circumstances. International community is watching us. We should be able to demonstrate that we have what it takes to fix it. And I don't think it is beyond us. But then, certainly, as long as you have identified those who have done what, law enforcement will deal with them. And I'm glad EOCO is already on the road out there. So let us delineate the various functions. Let the regulator regulate the business of banking under the circumstances. Let the law enforcement agents deal with those who have been culpable under the circumstances. And let those of us who will speak to the issues make sure that everything we say or do will contribute to moving Ghana on from where we have gotten to at the stage. Because apart from Standard Chartered Bank and Barclays, FNB, EcoBank perhaps, Stanbic, and the Nigerian banks who may have branches outside Africa, how many of us indigenous banks have? All of us deal with correspondent banking relationships. We must be careful so they don't risk rate Ghana negatively to affect the banking industry.
Now, Doc, how do you interpret this? And I just want to read a portion of. Go ahead.
Sammy, let me answer him. Risk rating. Yesterday, I got a report from Copaco and DEG. We have been risk rated very, very high. So it's not a new news to us. Those of us who are sourcing funds from overseas, I got a whole chunk from them because I was looking for capital for an institution. They said, oh, Ghana banking now is good for nothing. So what we are saying is not just what is not known. It's known because, let me quote you, IMF in 2018 report said about capital verification. If you like, go and see. IMF told Bank of Ghana that they must have a new robust of capital verification. The capital verification we are talking about, somebody wanted to set a bank. He didn't have capital. You decided to give him capital. He took the money and squandered it. IMF report 2018 said Bank of Ghana must now begin to look. And the section 7 of the Banking Act, the BCSDI, it says that, I'll read, 7, subsection 6. It said Bank of Ghana supply with information must verify, certify, if possible, authenticate. So if I tell you I have capital, it is the job of Bank of Ghana to normally verify, then certify and add authenticate. So if somebody didn't have capital and he can run, you give him something to run, you're not doing your job. And I'm telling you that it is all over the world. I've said it. Yesterday I got a message from there. They told me that. Ghana banking system. So what we are saying is not telling the whole world. Let us accept our shortcomings, and as you said, then begin to look forward. But if you don't admit it and correct it, we will sweep it under cupboard, and then the same thing will come in 5 years' time. So let us admit it, talk about it, then we have strategy.
The reaction is that you may be talking about, pre-certification processes, which the regulator will not get to know. At the level of promoting and getting provisional license, you may be able to establish all of these and see that the books, everything is fine. It is after that, and that appears to be what has happened in the circumstances that we are speaking to, at least according to the central bank.
Yeah, let me tell you, if you're sourcing capital from overseas, there is what we call Global Deposit Certificate, which goes to show that your money has passed AML test. It tells you the source of the fund. It tells you who is supplying the fund, so that you don't bring in. So even a local person setting a bank, Bank of Ghana should have a robust way of certification. Yes, because other than that, I can bring money laundering into it. But the law saying that you need to verify, certify, and possible authenticate. So if you're starting the whole institution, every information must go through these processes, so that you don't bring in some landed money.
Okay, so I was saying that we need to keep to some of the specifics as have been revealed so far.
Okay.
And one of the stories that was done out of these revelations, I'm reading a portion of it. It says the management of the now defunct Capital Bank used liquidity support given by the Bank of Ghana as capital to secure a license for another collapsed bank, Sovereign Bank. The report cites an emergency board and executive committee meeting on October 13, 2015, which notes concern with the manner in which the Ghana cedis 610 million liquidity support to the struggling bank was being used. The monies were moved by a member of the board, Atoesian, into companies believed to be owned by him and others. About a dozen companies we have been made to know. The rest of the money was used to set up the Sovereign Bank. Quote, funds raised through the commercial paper issuance by the MC Management Services Limited and Brittling Services were used as capitalization for the establishment of the Sovereign Bank Limited. So I'm asking, what wrongs are we being told about here? The report also indicated that Dr. Mensah Otabil may have been part of, he was chair of the board, may have been party to the misuse of liquidity support given the bank. Among the flagged transactions were 27.5 million Ghana cedis used for business promotion and handled by a board member, transfers to IFS amounting to 23.9 million, transfers to Nordia Capital amounting to 65 million, and transfer to All-Time Capital amounting to 130 million. And they are saying that these are funds that were given for the purposes of rescuing them, and those funds, instead of being used to serve that purpose, were being used for all of these. We later surely will pay attention to the fact that some of these entities have issued statements. All-Time Capital, for example, has issued a statement disclaiming, discounting all the claims that are being made against it.
Thank you very much. I think if the report is before you, which is the truth report that we have received, to give a liquidity support of 610 million to a struggling bank for the money to be shared and even set up a new bank, that is where they said, I'm calling for head. I'm not calling for head. But the question is that, what is the governance framework for Bank of Ghana liquidity support? If you prove money for somebody, how do you monitor them? And like Clara said, when did they realize that the money has been used in certain, some phantom businesses and monies have been used in certain capital, or monies have been shared? So that question about who is monitoring this disbursement facility, because liquidity, emergency liquidity support is normally given to, if you read the law, is normally given to solvent but illiquid bank. And I'm sure at that material time, if you read the history of this bank, they were not solvent. So for you to have given them another liquidity support of 610 million and nobody actually monitored, that is why I'm saying that there is a problem there. Now, instead of, it's just like giving me blood when I'm sick and I go to Kolebu, the doctor decided to give me blood. And then when I take the blood, instead of giving the blood, I'll just go and sell the blood. So it means your problem will continue. So immediately this problem was identified. What did Bank of Ghana do? Because liquidity support is something that even IMF raised concern. In 2018, they raised concern. That is why we are now being forced to even look at it. We see, when we give you liquidity support, it's just like when you're giving a facility to a client, a customer, they tell you that 25% of net worth should be secured and 10%. And I'm saying that if you're going to give money to insolvent bank, what criteria did you use? And what monitoring did you do? Because there was weak monitoring there, the people chose to do it and share it. For me, that is where I say I'm looking for head. I think I'm not looking for head. But this, to me, I'm not a lawyer. Lawyer, will tell me. I think, and Clara will tell me, there is every element of criminality. Criminality. I'm not a lawyer, but please forgive me. my ignorance. But if people can share money meant to support your operations, you decide to take it out. You have every intention to call to let the nation down. And this support is a taxpayer money. Let us always be mindful that the liquidity support is taxpayers' money. Let me end my statement. This year, the first time in the history of Bank of Ghana, if you read the 2017 report, Bank of Ghana has made a loss of 1.6 billion. It stems from the liquidity support given to these insolvent and illiquid banks. They could not recover it because they were not collateralized. Ideally, if you're giving a support, you need to collateralize with treasury bill. Unfortunately, he who that is down, they didn't have any security. So Bank of Ghana decided, and then when we give you that money, you made, and the impact is the loss. First time in the history of Ghana, Bank of Ghana has made a loss of 1.6, and it has been attributed to these unsecured facilities or emergency liquidity support given to the banking sector. So I'm saying that who has the governance framework of the liquidity support? Who approves? Who monitors to ensure that money is given to support operations is used for the operations rather than going to people's businesses? And then when I call for the head, they say I shouldn't call for head. I think I will call for head. We need to be serious about this. And Bank of Ghana itself has to be serious. And IMF in their report 2018 has made this report. That is why they are now putting the brakes on it.
Maybe, like you said, they need to keep everybody up to speed with whatever they are doing exactly. And the GCB particularly, because there are claims about the valuations that were done for some of the assets of Capital and UT Bank, for the vehicles, for example, that they were valued at ridiculously low prices and sold off. And so you can't even recover much. Okay, it's interesting, but I don't know, Clara, again, look.
I want to chip in something here.
Yes.
I spoke about the perception of the international community, of financial community on Ghana, and I'm very much taken aback that Prof will tell us, or Doc will tell us, an agency somewhere, body somewhere has already risk-rated Ghana downwards. And I think it's not anything that we should be happy about. And we should be doing everything we can so that even if this body is not going to risk us positively, we don't get risked any further than where we've got into. And it's very important for me. And so I will want to appeal once again to all of us that with their foregoing, BoG, or the regulator, cannot say that they haven't heard. And they cannot also say that we were 100% right, as it were. But of course, the regulation is such that even if the regulator had turned out to have made some flaws, they still had a regulation to work with. If UT Bank and Capital Bank, or these banks that were supported, were compliant and responsible enough, we wouldn't have gotten to this stage.
Okay.
Because Bank of Ghana, for whatever reason, like any central bank anywhere, has a function as a lender of last resort under such circumstances.
Okay. Now, Clara, what legal issues are you seeing that you can assist the public to properly, better appreciate the matters as they call for prosecution? Everybody is talking prosecution. When the matters, as I read earlier, came up at the said board meeting, we are informed that Mr. Atuyesia, for example, had stated that the placement of 130 million with all-time capital, and again, it's interesting to note that these entities, some of them have come out to deny flat some of the claims that are attributed to them, seeking to suggest that these officials were not reporting accurately to those who were compiling these reports. So it says the 130 million was strategic funds, and that it will be paid back by March 2016, quote unquote, that the board chair had assured the management that he would ensure that the funds were returned by March 2016. Then there's reference to the commercial papers are seen to be signed for Capital Bank by both its CEO, Reverend Fitzgerald Odonko, and the Chief Business Officer, Horace Tete, according to the report. Question is, what is criminal that people are calling for prosecution about putting money into a venture where you expect, you can expect a genuine return so that you can quickly turn it around to rescue yourself? What is wrong about that?
Okay, Samson, the issue or the fact is that, or the truth is that when Bank of Ghana or anybody comes out to give us statements that A, B, C, D, and allegations are made, it's only reasonable to expect rebuttals. That is why I always say that it is not fair on the general public that we don't have access to a lot of the information. So you throw information out there, then say there's a rebuttal. Then the rest of us are reduced to spectators watching the rebuttals going on. There's no need for that. Now, with that issue of funds, the Bank of Ghana made a statement that there was willful deceit. The fact is that correct? If there was deceit, the law is a crime. Because the laws, if you provide incorrect statements you know that are incorrect, and you provide incorrect statements to the Bank of Ghana, you've committed an offense under the banking laws. The Attorney General is seized with the power and jurisdiction to proceed accordingly. Apart from that, there are civil remedies available. And the Bank of Ghana has capacity to sue and be sued in its own name. So if the Bank of Ghana has evidence or is sure that incorrect statements have been provided to it, apart from telling us, what is it doing about it? Because did they rely on the incorrect statements?
They say they have handed over a dossier to EOCO.
Well, if the evidence is there, I'm sure that the appropriate body here, Attorney General can go with it, unless they say they haven't done the investigations. But if they've done the investigations, why not? And
are you saying you expected the Bank of Ghana itself to initiate some legal actions?
It can. Civil remedies. There are civil remedies. It cannot. I don't expect the Bank of Ghana to initiate criminal proceedings.
Right.
But the Bank of Ghana can initiate civil proceedings. It has capacity to sue and be sued. So if somebody provided incorrect statement to the Bank of Ghana and the Bank of Ghana relied on the incorrect statement and made some losses and suffered some loss as a result of that reliance, it's an actionable. It's actionable. And there are remedies available in the courts for it. So I expect to see the Bank of Ghana, if it is true, because at this stage, like I said, they will make allegations, there will be rebuttals. So they shouldn't reduce us to spectate, so that we just watch them go back and forth with banding of allegations left and right. But if the Bank of Ghana says something is done wrong, I want to believe the regulator or the institution. My question is, so what are you doing about that? Now, the issue of licenses, you move money, or the issue being raised, you've been given support, liquidity support. Then you take that money and go and set up another bank. I don't know. I am trying to understand how that happens. The reason being that when you're applying for a license, you disclose your shareholders. So the Bank of Ghana, in the application for the new bank, their license, they know who owns that money. So I am finding it difficult to understand how you can see that you know that this person is not liquid, for which reason you give them money. And then you see them, so where did they, then they have money to set up a bank, and that doesn't raise any eyebrows. So the issue comes back to, I always say that, one, we always have the framework, but two, I don't think we have bothered to build the values that should make this framework work. The truth is that in democracy, in any part of the world, for a democracy to secure the benefits of democracy for its people, the legal framework is not enough. You need the right values. And I think our history is proof of that, because we have the legal framework there. But when it comes to implementing the law, and we are going to go on usually the other side of, oh, this is my friend, I don't want to do this, then people go and beg, and then you close your eyes. The hypocrisy, you know this person is not competent, but you think you owe the person for whatever reasons, and we do everything. The truth is that accountability and democracy to secure the benefits that it has potential to secure for its people, accountability and responsibility are key. Secondly, meritocracy. I am not aware of any economy or any country in the world that has made it for its people, has been able to provide good services and quality of life for its people, giving its people opportunity to access their own prosperity without the value of meritocracy, the value of integrity, and then service. So it comes back for me, yes, we need a legal framework, but apart from probably just teaching the values in school, so that our students and our people learn to just use it to pass exams, and then when they get into the normal framework, the way we arrange ourselves eventually means that they cannot implement those values. So it comes back, I always say it's a chicken and egg situation. It comes back, I believe, to leadership. The reason why I say leadership is that it is leadership that must inspire and instill these values. So let the leadership start showing that it is interested in accountability, and that whether or not you'll be held accountable is not an issue of whether or not you are connected. Let's face it, a lot of the time we use scapegoats. We don't hold people accountable. You find the weakest link or the person who is less connected, and then you hang the blame on that person. The truth is, if we continue in that, we are not going anywhere.
But as we speak, William Matuesen's lawyers actually issued a statement, and in the statement they said, among other things, that following the takeover of the bank, that's Capital Bank, our client and other directors, shareholders, have been thoroughly investigated by the Economic and Organized Crime Office, EOCO, over the last 6 months, which is continuing. As far as our client is aware of, EOCO has not issued its findings on the investigations yet. There are several aspects of the circulating reports that are factually incorrect, and it is the expectation of our client that once EOCO conducts its investigations, concludes its investigations, and issues its report, every issue under public discussion will be addressed. And therefore, they are urging that the press be circumspect in their reportage and await the outcome of the findings of EOCO. 6 months, you think it's taking too long?
My issue is, I just want to see the institutions updating us on what has gone wrong and the steps they are taking. It's like I said, holding people accountable. I don't actually think that is even calling for heads. If we are going to instill that value of accountability, we must learn to hold people accountable. Right. For me, it is not, aside the financial issues we are dealing about, let's also talk about role modeling for our youth. A lot of these people are people that a lot of young people had a lot of faith in, that they looked up to.
Entrepreneurial awards.
Yes, they looked up to and wanted to emulate, and then they gave them hope. With all of these issues coming, you are looking at broken hopes and broken dreams from the youth. So who are the role models that we are going to present to our youth?
Okay, so we'll take a quick break here. When we return, we'll wrap up on the banking discussion very briefly. We'll also look at the matters arising from the consolidation of the 5 banks. They have issued statements to their staff that suggest all may not be well, as was anticipated, including anticipation of the organized labor. They had thought nobody would lose their job. We'll be right back.